This is tea so piping hot. None of you guys have actually heard about it before because it has not been posted anywhere. This is about a big VTuber by the name of Dokibird and a charity stream that Doki had hosted over a year ago. It's actually crazy how bad this all falls apart. Manager's like, why does it cost so much? Why couldn't you donate it? Da 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 da, right? How is this the artist's fault? How is this the artist's responsibility that your team screwed up? We're a totally different legal entity from the old company. The old company had no official agreements with you, and the new company is looking into this and also have no agreements with you, let alone take over things of the old company. To this day, the artist has not been compensated for their labor, nor has the bidder received a PC. And it appears there's a new builder who is doing the build for free. I made this document, so I want to make sure I'm covering this correctly. Is this real? Unfortunately, it is. So, the context is, Dokibird hosted an auction that ended March 3rd, 2024 for a custom-built PC designed by the artist, with the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation being the charity of choice for the Tiltify. If you guys don't know Tiltify, it is a charity platform in which auctioneers can go and sign up on the platform, host charity auctions on there, and then it will pay directly out to the charity of choice. In this case, the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation. The way Tiltify works, money does not cross the hands of the person who hosted it. So with Tiltify, Doki will not touch the money. That's just how Tiltify works. The PC is valued at 3.5K and the winner bid 6.6K on the PC. What is the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation? You know what? That's actually a good question. So if you go onto their websites, it reads, funding cutting-edge research to find cures for mental illness. The Brain and Behavior Research Foundation is committed to alleviating the suffering caused by mental illness by awarding scientific research grants that will ultimately enable people to live full, happy, and productive lives. So it sounds like a good charity off the rip. I mean, I didn't do research to the background of this charity, but it looks good. Also, again, I don't think I need to say this to you guys again, but please don't send hate to any parties involved, Doki or any of the other individuals as well, okay? Because we're not out here trying to go harass people. It's kind of just to like lay the information out. So, proof of Doki stating artists would be paid. 1. Doki states February 20th, 2024 that artists would be paid for their services. This is a tweet that Doki put out themselves. To all artists and creators, I'll be running a charity auction and stream next week, and I'm looking for people who would like to collab and work with me to make one-of-a-kind Doki-themed items, plushies, figures, sculptures, sign artwork, prints, etc. to auction off for charity. I will be paying you for your service. Please send your portfolio. The items do not need to be completed before the auction starts, so don't worry about any rush. They'll state where the auction is going and other stuff that is being offered. So, some more information. Doki's VOD also cites extra information. At the 8-minute mark in Doki's VOD, Doki references the manager that will be censored. We will label them manager number 1 as helping grant Doki access to Tiltify and setting up the auction. A little bit of foreshadowing. Why are they called manager 1? You will see that there's actually 3 managers that get involved in this scenario. So, 17 minutes into the VOD, Doki states she would be paying for shipping the products.
I am providing the money for shipping for all of these items, so do not worry if you're wherever you live, you're like, oh my god, would they be able to ship it there? I will be providing the money for the shipping to the creators who will be shipping these products to you if you win the auction. And also, even if like some of the items are not made by me, it's not coming from me, I will be sending an exclusive postcard to each winner of the auction.
We hear out of her own mouth that she would be paying for the shipping. And then also in that same VOD, she mentions having a duplicate of each item for herself to twin with the auction winners. You will see later that this will be something that will not be mentioned to the artist until a year from when this started. So Doki's manager also confirmed this in DMs. This gets a little bit confusing because a bunch of people are redacted. In teal is manager number 1, in pink is the artist and builder. I realized later, so I did that in the second half of the document, that those who are colorblind are not going to be able to figure out what is teal and what is pink. I'm really sorry. I'll try to make it clear for when I'm reading this out loud, but it will be more clear later on in the document. Manager number 1 says, hi there, and this is in DMs to the artist. I'll be providing any updates or comments Doki might have moving forward, and we'll be using a mock-up if you choose to provide one by the 2nd. So they're referring to March 2nd, 2024. Or we can use photos in your portfolio if you aren't, which is totally understandable due to the turnaround time. We don't have a super tight timeline, so keep that in mind. You can take all the time you need on this project, but we would like a general estimate to provide during the auction, and ideally, we would like to get an idea of price, as Doki is planning on paying all of the artists she has chosen. If we're able to potentially work something out with Height, we can explore that too. Height is a PC brand. So the artist artist on February 28th, the day later, responds, "Hi, Manager 1, thank you for accepting my request and getting back to me. Heart. I am glad to hear about the timeline. That gives me a lot of reassurance since custom projects always take a lot of time and work to put together. I was already in talks with Heights, so I've looped in my contract and I'm waiting to hear back from him at the moment." Manager 1 says, "Of course, I'm sure we can work something out for this. I will double check and see if it's possible to potentially get some items from an upcoming project for this, and hopefully we can come up with a solid idea as this progresses." The artist says, "Which branch of Height are you in talks with, if you don't mind me asking? Since I'm in talks with a UK manager, I'm wondering if it's worth roping the different teams together for better communication. I also already have a mock-up if you're ready to see it." The manager says, "Ooh, yes, please." So the artist sends over the mock-up, as you can see here, and they writes, "Usually I wouldn't start to work on a project or provide a mock-up before agreeing on payment terms and stuff, but I trust we can sort that out later. Also, this is just a first idea, so it's totally open to suggestions and comments from you guys or Doki. Just a note, my concept art also never looks like the final product. The final product is usually 10 times better." The manager 1 says, "We're in talks with the marketing executive producer of iBuyPower in collaboration with the design team at Height. I'll definitely be able to give you a sure answer on whether or not it would be possible to get access to the items for our upcoming project for this, which would be amazing for everyone involved, later today." Also, that looks absolutely amazing. We could not have imagined a better design. And the artist in response to that says, "Ooh, interesting that iBuyPower is involved. If it's their marketing executive producer, this is definitely gonna be big." And here, important to note, the manager says, "As far as payment terms go, Doki is 100% going to pay whatever you charge for the PC. Once we have an idea of the final cost, we can finalize everything then." Red flags in the project. The first red flag and issue is that management published the PC concept for the Tiltify auction without confirming a budget with the artist, or that work could be edited. To note, in the Tiltify auction, the design was listed as potentially being subject to change. Basically, from here on out, we will see that in the beginning of the communication between Management 1 and the artist, everything looked good. Like, they reached out to the artist, they liked the submission, they wanted to work with the artist, aka the PC builder, and then things just devolved from there. It just literally goes into the shitter. It's actually crazy how bad this all falls apart. Again, the first issue is that they never confirmed the budget before starting the Tiltify. So this is a screenshot straight out of Tiltify for this auction where it reads, "Concept art is subject to change and winners will be notified of all necessary changes to the final product." Another point to note, the artist told the management they were going to be out of office starting March 1st for another project, and on that day, management had a message asking for edits to be made and to list the item on Tiltify. So this is on March 1st, where the builder was out of office. They say, "For this concept, can we remove the part about the LCD screen and the touch removed from the chassis name? Since the touch is actually out of stock at this point and there's no ETA on the touch case getting back in stock. I can edit that myself and I can let them know in the description that case is subject to change between the available ones." The day after, management messages, "Hi, just reach out to let you know that the listings are officially published and can be seen here." They link the Tiltify. "You're more than welcome to post your progress photos or completed pieces on social media along with a link to the auction house. Thank you so much for all your hard work, and we can't wait to see how much everyone loves your artwork tomorrow. If you have any changes to your listing, please let me know and I can get it changed ASAP." So this is where more issues start cropping up. The second issue is that management set the starting price of the auction, assumed to be the cost of the PC build, without asking the artist, aka the builder, how much the project would cost. They instead went to the artist's PC part picker page and grabbed a previous build and used that number as the estimated cost of this new build. Straight out of the Tiltify, it says the PC is valued at $3,500. However, that's wrong. The estimate of $3,500 is actually incorrect as well. Because even if you go off of the artist's previous build, which again makes no sense because this is a completely brand new build, the artist is based in the UK, and the build cost was 3,500 Great British pounds, not 3,500 USD. So the price estimate is extremely confusing because, as mentioned previously, Doki had also mentioned wanting a duplicate of each item to twin with the auction winner. A second PC was never mentioned to the artist. And you see in the DMs between Manager 1 and the artist, no talk of a second PC. Also, the 3,500 USD price tag does not clarify whether it's 3,500 for one PC or 3,500 for the cost of two PCs to be built. Because that is the weird thing about this whole auction that was also really confusing. A lot of it's confusing, but this is just one of them. Because are the buyers auctioning to pay money for one PC or two PCs? And this is for like all the items, in fact, right? So is the buyer basically going to have to pay double? And then one of the items would then go to Doki and then they would get the other one? Or is Doki going to pay out of pocket for a duplicate product that would just mirror what the buyer bought? So that was also very confusing. Then finally, going to PC Part Picker to estimate the build cost for a PC will cause huge issues down the line, as you only get quoted for the PC parts with no addition of labor costs. And the third issue is management. In the Tiltify auction, it was listed the buyer could choose their own specs. You can see right here. It says, this piece is a custom-built Doki themed PC. Since the PC has not been built yet, you are able to have some control over the creative process and specs of the PC. The PC is valued at 3,500 USD, and the parts in the PC will fall in line with a general PC of that pricing. So an example, a previous build of the artist with roughly the same cost was, and then they linked it. If the client, the buyer, has the ability to choose their own parts, that's going to raise the cost of the PC. Or lower it depending on what they want, but I feel like very few people would choose to get like shittier parts in the build. Out the gate, this is already poorly handled by management. And this is an issue because no upfront budget was provided to the artist. So here we have, this is now March 4th, 2024. Manager 1 messages the artist again because, again, remember the artist was out of town, and the manager says, "Good morning. I want to send a small update. I'll message the winner today to confirm their shipping details and all that good stuff. I'm happy to be the go-between for you both, but if you and the winner are comfortable, I can get you both connected on Discord to streamline things for you guys as far as figuring out specs and stuff. Just let me know and I'll make it happen." Secondly, regarding the payment for the PC, I know that's probably up in the air at the moment, so we can stay in contact and figure that out as the project progresses or as we have a more clear idea of projected costs. I did base the market value off your previous builds, and we would like to stay around that general cost for the parts themselves, but would like to give the buyer some wiggle room as far as, potentially going for a cheaper CPU, cooler option to allow more money to go towards storage and RAM if that's something they'd like. But we won't know until we speak to the buyer. The artist responds, "Hey, I've tied up my brand deal from last weekend, so let me catch up with your message." And that was like 3 days later. So the fourth issue revolves around the mysterious brand activation, also from Heights, and involving Doki being brought up by the manager. It was confusing the artist as they weren't sure whether this activation was referring to the charity auction PC or something else entirely. The artist says, "I just got off a call with the Height UK community manager who mentioned that Height are actively working with Doki on a thing. Would that be the other activation you spoke about briefly? Trying to gain some clarity so I'm not getting my wires muddled with different things going on." And the manager responds, "Hello, just got a chance to read over everything. To answer your last question, yes, and I believe it will be its own separate thing. However, Height understands this PC was a one-to-one being built for the charity auction and don't mind the Y70 case being used. But at this time, they will have no involvement in our end on the production of the PC. I've already sent an email to the winner to get some clarification on their end, but I'll reach out again in case they missed it. And of course, I made it clear to the winner that you are not going to be involved with any tech support or potential issues they have with the PC. And I've let them know that any issues they may experience would have to be fixed through a third party or directly through the manufacturer." So yeah, this got a little confusing because then there was some third party sponsorship thing also involving the same company that was maybe gonna sponsor the build that later ended up not sponsoring the build. So now we get into communication issues. After this, there were communication between the artist and the management about some personal issues the artist was going through, and them explaining they might be slower to respond and get work done. There's discussions of potentially having the PC done by June through August 2024, but the artist doesn't confirm that as of a certain deadline. No deadline was provided by management to complete the build, and the Tiltify also estimates 3 to 4 months being the turnover time, potentially longer. So towards the end of March 21st, the artist responds, "Hey, Management 1, thank you so much for your patience with my replies. I have been recovering from addiction lately, which has been a huge struggle, and I feel that my response time has definitely taken a hit. So I want to mention it briefly to provide some additional context and transparency, and also to hold myself accountable. I wasn't 100% sure whether it was relevant or not, but since it's affecting my professional conduct, I felt it was best for you to be informed moving forward. I hope you can understand. Heart." And then the artist says, "That's fantastic. Thank you so much. It clears up worries surrounding my side of things," responding to, the artist not being on the hook for PC issues issues. Let me take a read through the update from the buyer, and OMG, the opening line, that's hilarious. We're all out here apologizing for late replies. Okay, I've given it a read. Let me do some cooking on hardware for this build, and I'll get back to you with a possible list of suggestions. It might take some time while figuring out what works best for his needs. I noticed he said he's not going to be in the US from June to late August. If this PC is completed during this time, would you be happy to have the completed build shipped to your address, then handle shipping to the buyer when they're back in the country? I may need to relocate apartments during the period they're not in the US, so I would prefer that. Then the manager responds, that's okay, I've been pretty sick as well, so I've also been away and not here much. I hope things get better for you. I know how hard it is to quit from my own experiences. If it comes down to it, we're more than happy to handle the shipment of the PC. The manager says, sounds good, there's no rush, to take your time and take care of yourself. Then April 17th, the manager bumps it, hey there, the winner of the auction has requested to establish contact with you to discuss details of the PC himself and to check with you on any updates you may have for him. I did let him know that you were working on getting those parts figured out, but he still requested to make contact. I can send over your Twitter if you're comfortable. And then over a month later, the manager bumps it again. Hi again, I want to give you a heads up. I've chosen to part ways with Doki merch, and everything regarding the auction items will be handed off to my replacement once I leave on the 31st of this month. If it's all right with you, I'd love to include your socials in the onboarding document I'm passing along. They will handle everything moving forward, including any updates necessary for Doki and any communication with the auction winner. Please let me know if that's all right. I'll include your Discord and email for my replacement. So on June 2nd, the second management then reaches out to the artist through email, writing, hello, this is Ribby, which is a temporary pseudonym. I'm the replacement assistant for the previous manager number 1. I am following up on the custom PC charity item with regards to its current status. To my knowledge, in the turnover documentation I was given, the item has not been fulfilled, and the previous assistant had issues getting updates from you in a timely manner. It has been a few months since the charity auction ended, and we're trying to wrap up our commitments regarding this project. If you're still open to finishing the commission or have been working on it and have an estimated delivery date, please give us an update within 2 to 3 business days. Otherwise, we may have to go with a plan B and either reimburse the winning bidder or find a different custom PC builder. If you can't fulfill the item, we understand. Life gets difficult, just let us know and we'll get out of your hair. Sincerely, Ribby. The artist responded June 18th asking for more information, but confirming they still wish to fulfill the project if the option was available. So here it's all redacted, but you can see the artist says they ran into untreated health complications and that they weren't able to work during the window, and they really apologize for the delays and inconvenience they may have caused. They kind of cover some details here, like some issues basically about the PC build, because the buyer of the PC build wants a PC capable of machine learning and wants to pay for additional parts, and that extra things were requested, so there were some issues with the parts, etc. And then an issue with the PC case design, because when the artist made the design, they did not know that that specific LCD panel in the touch case was, or like that case specifically was not available, so they would need to kind of like work around that. And the artist says, since I wrapped up a project with MSI, I can give you a more accurate time frame for the project's completion. I estimate it would take a minimum of 6 weeks and roughly 12 weeks at maximum. And that I understand if you would choose to go with plan B, which is like the full refund, or a different PC builder at this stage, especially you did say you would like me to reply in 2 to 3 days. I can only offer my apologies for the major dropping of the ball. So TLDR, I still wish to fulfill this project if that's an option, and I'd be able to commence work as soon as we work out an agreed rate and scope. So yeah, basically the artist offered a couple options. It was like either 1, they would complete the build, they apologize for being late. Option 2, the buyer would be refunded, and option 3, a different builder would be used. January 2025, Dokibird personally reached out to the artist in Twitter DMs and through their personal website to put the artist, the charity winner, and a member of Doki's staff, which will be the 3rd iteration of the management team, who will be in green, into a group chat together. At this point, it's been 9 months since the buyer had bid on the PC. So Doki had DM'd, the winner of the charity auction has been unhappy with the wait, and I was pulled in to fix the issue as it has grown bigger than it should be. And the artist says, hey Doki, I haven't had any messages about the charity PC since last summer, so I honestly wasn't sure what was going on. Doki says, what's your Discord? Is it okay if I add you and the charity winner and one of my staff to fix the issue? And the artist says, yes, although I need to go over a few details with your staff before jumping into a Discord group chat with your team and the auction winner. They give their Discord. Let me know if your staff's Discord name so I can keep an eye out for them. And then Doki gave the name, and the artist says, hi Doki, we really need your personal involvement in the group chat. That message was then sent to like way later, like 2 weeks later. So here is another message. This is Doki themselves messaging the artist. But Doki says, hi, I've sent a DM about this on Twitter, but I've been told by my staff that you have been MIA regarding the charity PC. I want to know what's going on and why was this happening. The winner of the charity auction has been unhappy with the wait, and I was pulled in to fix the issue as it has grown bigger than it should be. At this point, the artist was confused, as since since they had not received a response back from the email. So they assumed the management was going with plan B, reimbursing the winner or finding another custom PC builder. The artist was reluctant to join a group chat with the charity winner, as at this point the artists themselves still had no idea how much they're getting paid for the project, or any other questions answered. They requested to speak privately with a new management and staff member first to sort out payment, budget, and other details as to not appear unprofessional in front of the client. Because, mind you, at this point, a budget was still not decided yet. No official budget was ever given at this point. The original Management 1, was like, oh, please keep it within this previous build, 3,500 USD, but they got the number completely wrong because remember, they pulled the number, assumed it was in USD when the number was actually in British pounds. So that estimate number was already incorrect as it is, and no official budget was ever given. So this is going to get a little confusing because so many people are redacted out of this, but this is the first contact with current management. So green, or the person that's messaging, is manager number 3. Now, pink, remember, is the artist, and this teal name over here is the first manager, the manager number 1. Manager 3 says, "Hi, artist. I am redacted, part of Dokibird staff team. I've been working with Doki since August, and before that, you had contact with manager 1, most likely regarding the charity auction. I am unsure how exactly this came to be and why Doki has to pay this out of her own pocket and the item isn't donated, but this has been before my time. Regardless, this is the item." They link the Tiltify. The PC case has a fair market value of 3,500 USD at the time, a year ago. From what I understand is that the person that asked for the PC also has some additional requests that they were willing to pay for themselves. At the moment, I feel we need to find a solution to what you can deliver for that amount currently, referring to, I guess, 3,500 USD, what the auction winner is happy with, and what we can do to remedy the situation. 1-year-old specs can be an issue. I personally think we need to look at the charity item and update it and what it would currently cost you to fulfill. Then we should get in direct DM contact with the bidder of the auction and verify the specs and tell him this is what we can do for the price. If they seem to want additional specs, then we should, Doki bidder or Doki staff, talk about that and what the cost is and who should pay for it. So regarding the underlying statement of, I am unsure why Doki has to pay for this out of her own pocket and the item isn't donated. So there was an option for artists that Doki was working with for the auction to donate their work and have that donated work be auctioned off for charity. But again, like I showed you in the beginning of stream in the VOD, Doki had previously stated she would cover the pieces and pay for it if the artists don't want to donate. And there was never an expectation artists would donate. Because remember, I will be paying you for your service. So manager 3 starts getting a little weird about this, like, you should have donated it thing, which again, in my opinion, is not fair whatsoever, you know? And I think because it's for charity, this does devolve a little bit because there starts to be some sort of guilt tripping of being like, well, for the good of charity, you should have donated it, da da da. This might be a little bit of a hot take. Charity is good and all, and I respect giving to charity, but you shouldn't try to guilt trip other people whose labor you're using for charity donations unless they like fully consented to it, right? Being like, oh, this is something to be donated for charity. Do you have something you want to donate? I have been part of charity auctions where I donated time and labor and stuff. I knew it was a donation going straight into it. But if you tell people, hey, I'm doing a charity and I'm going to pay for the labor, then you need to fulfill that because that is what you stated. So later than doing a 180, being like, you should have donated it, is so unfair to the people involved. Plus, again, donating is a privilege. It's a great privilege. And if you do have the ability to donate to charities, I truly recommend it. Charities need your money, right? They operate pro bono, but not over the expense of like paying your own rent, etc., putting food on your own table. You know, like they say, you gotta put your own oxygen mask on before you go and help others. And it's great if you have excess to donate to charity, but guilting other people to try to donate stuff to charity, I just don't like that personally. So the second continuation of that screenshot I showed you, the artist says, to help clarify around the charity auction, Doki originally put out a tweet calling for creators and artists for a paid opportunity, which I applied for with my portfolio. Here's a tweet I responded to, where you can see it says, I will be paying you for my service. Budget conversations begin. Because the PC build was listed as 3,500 USD in the auction, which was not run by the artist, but an assumption manager 1 made, as in the number, The staff member assumed the build would still cost 3,500 USD. The artist provided a PDF including the cost of parts, additional things the bidder wanted, and their hourly wage. They priced their build service at the national London living wage, undercharging below their standard rates. This is due to lack of transparency with the budget and how the artist felt pressured in being responsible to sort this PC mess out. The artist says, to make sure I have this right, the services are being paid for like Doki originally said. And manager 3 says, yes, they would be paid, originally listed as 3,500 USD, I think. Sorry if it's the wrong number, I'm backtracking the auction from the limited info I was provided. So the artist provides the PDF and states, since the build at auction was based off one of my previous PC builds, I used components that are equal to this cost and calculated the services in addition to that, including my work, customization materials, etc. If we agree on these details, I can go straight to the auction winner and discuss the specs they want replaced. Let me know if you have any questions and we can go over them. And manager 3 says, oh, but when I calculate the total price of the PDF, it's not around the 3.5k USD, but more around 7.2k USD, and they might even ask for upgrades, which would be more than what the auction bid for. Are you sure it's the same specs? If so, I'll run it by Doki and staff and see what would be the best choice to continue. And here is where we run into the next problem of this auction, guys. I think the people hosting the auction, I guess management number 1, I think it didn't occur to them. And this is where we go into the original problem of them going to the artist's PC part picker and pulling the list of parts. They didn't consider the labor cost of building the PC, which is something that needs to be paid for. So that 3,500 USD number, remember, it's already wrong because it's not in the right currency. But secondly, that number only counts for parts. It doesn't count for the labor of building the PC, which again is labor that should be paid for, right? But that's like the equivalent of like, I don't know, going to a mechanic and then I don't know, you give him like a part of your car. Sorry, I suck at mechanic and car stuff, but like, you know, I actually broke the side mirror off of my car. Because that's equivalent of going to the mechanic and just handing them the mirror and being like, can you put this back on? And then they're like, oh, it's gonna cost you like 200 bucks. And I'm like, why can't you do it for free? I gave you the part for that fell off my car. And they're like, well, yeah, but I need the time and expertise to put it back on. So you need to pay, you know, that is where the issue comes in. The artist emphasized with the bidder, who spent 6.6 thousand USD and hadn't received a PC, and began trying to sort the problem out. The artist even started to look for alternative ways to make the build more affordable by contacting their personal brand connections. Again, this is like extra stuff the artist is doing on top of it, like flexing your personal relationships to try to like pull strings and get things done is not an expectation that would happen in scenarios like this. Like, this is like going above and beyond. Some people might read this and be like, well, like the artist should have done that to make it as cheap as possible for Doki. It takes a lot to ask your relationships for stuff because you kind of like use up the amount of asks you get. Does that make sense? Like, trying to speak on it from like an influencer perspective anyways, I'm not a PC builder. I've built 2 PCs in my life. You can kind of only ask your personal relationships for so many things before they're gonna get tired of you. So like you kind of use up one of your like free asks essentially to like pull strings for a charity of auction that kind of is falling apart essentially. Because yeah, some people might be like, oh, why couldn't you just do this from the start? Like, you only get to ask so many times. So now January 17th, 2025, the artist says the original hardware cost of my Cinna PC has always been 3,500 British pounds, but I believe it's been mistakenly put down as 3,500 USD in the auction, which is why the pricing is misaligned. The specs are accurate and as close as they can be. There's the exception that the chassis in the Doki PC design isn't the same as the one used for the Cinna PC, but we didn't confirm a price breakdown specifically for the Doki PC in advance before the auction went ahead. There is an option to lower the specs to save on component cost, although it might be difficult because it wouldn't align with the specs advertised to the auction winner. Because by the way, I want to remind you, the PC was auctioned as you could pick your own specs. The artist continues, the winner has said that they're happy to pay for upgrades, so that wouldn't be an issue and I would handle that with them. So try not to worry that much about that side of it. You shouldn't be having to also pay for components to be upgraded. Besides, the Cinna PC is already Gen 5, so there's not been a huge amount in terms of upgrades yet anyways, aside from the 50 series GPUs, which haven't even released yet. Would you like me to go to the winner and speak with them about the specs they do want first so that we have a fuller picture? Because if so, drop me their username and let them know to expect a request from me. And then the artist says, hey manager, I hope I'm not spamming you with messages here, but I've got an update that might also help us with this somewhat. I heard back from a contact this morning and may be able to get support on the PC chassis, which would help reduce the cost. One of the major things about the PC case was that they were only available in the US, so ordering it to the UK was going to incur a hefty chunk in taxes and international shipping. Plus, it's one of the more expensive cases on the market in the first place. The case alone was going to be 843 USD in my original calculation. If I managed to get support with it because the case has become available to UK distributors, then that could offset the cost entirely. Manager's like, why does it cost so much? Why couldn't you donate it? Da 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 da, right? So the artist got confirmation that they were going to get support with the case to help alleviate the pressure of the cost. The manager says, oh, so this is about the cost, right? About labor costs. So just to be sure, that would be 3,400 USD for labor costs, which, when you calculated for the UK national living wage. And the artist says you might want to round up to the value the hardware was listed, 3,500 if the buyer wants to replace parts. The $82 can go towards the hardware they choose. So my recommendation would be 3,500 USD plus 2,398 pounds. That way they're getting the full value as advertised. If that makes sense, it's up to the team though. The manager says, I will get you in direct contact with Doki and the charity auction bidder to sort these out. Would the pricing be final, so no more additional costs, correct? Like no more shipping and tax costs. And the artist says, okay, can you please do that to sort this out ASAP? It was agreed with manager 1 that your team would handle the shipment of the unit. Hence, any packaging shipping tax isn't included in the estimate I gave you, and it should be written in the PDF I sent. So manager 3 says, so it doesn't make any financial sense at that point. Basically, the item, work, shipping, tax together costs more than the offer the bidder put on the item. I will ask Doki what she wishes to do, since this is very badly arranged by ourselves before my time. But a refund to the bidder is what I'm primarily going to advertise because this makes very little sense to me. And to be fair, this is fair, right? It's fair to be frustrated that, oh, I hosted a charity to auction off the item, and then the item is going to cost more than what the auction is. But this is a whole issue with how the charity was set up in the first place. It should have never happened like this. There should have never been a scenario where in the charity, the item costs more than what the bid for the item was. And whatever Management 1 was doing was setting up the auction, because they never confirmed the price of the PC. They started the bid for the PC at 3,500, remember, US dollars, and that was not including labor cost. That was only the cost of PC parts. And they picked a random PC build and based it off that using the wrong currency. So the artist says, may I add my assistant to the group chat also? Their name is redacted. The manager 3 says, sure, we can discuss the options and choices, etc., as Doki should be able to make a decision on what the best solution should be. And the artist says, okay, I've added them. Do you mind if I ask what Doki's schedule looks like? We're all in different time zones, and I need to be able to assign time to this while balancing my other clients. It would be a huge help if you and Doki could block out a chunk of time so we could really hammer out the details. I'm dedicated to trying to work this out together. Now we get the group chat with everybody in it, which is the most confusing part of this document because everybody's redacted. This group chat is between the artist assistant, who I'll abbreviate to AA, Doki, the bidder / buyer, and management number 3. So I've labeled everyone. The yellow is the buyer. I've labeled it with like B or buyer. The pink is the artist. The orange is the artist assistant. Green is management number 3. I'll have it like labeled on the screenshots as well. So the conversation opens with the buyer, aka the bidder, clarifying their timeline. Censored is what likely could be manager number 1. So the buyer, January 19th, 2025, says, hello, I'll post my timeline here. Contact initiated soon after the auction by redacted, which is most likely manager 1, the manager that screwed up the auction. 2, I said I wanted to increase the budget of the build's hardware and I would be willing to pay the additional price. 3, there was no communication for a while. After some prodding, I was notified the artist had medical conditions and they were gone, and the team was looking for somebody to fill in as a new artist. Manager 1 also offered to send the postcard early, which I did not take the offer. So basically, Doki was offering free, I believe, signed postcards in all of the winners' packages. Manager 1 disappeared and subsequently was replaced by Ribby. Remember Ribby's manager 2, using the same email after several months. The replacement was not notified nor communicated to me about the auction until I sent follow-ups. 5, Ribby apologized and said, quote, the budget was allocated, end quote. 6, no real additional information of relevance was exchanged after that point, and Ribby went Mia as well. In the VTuber space, it is known there's a lot of crappy managers. I've covered many of them on my YouTube channel, okay? But the thing is, your managers are an extension of you. So is it your manager's fault they absolutely dropped the ball on the auction? Yes. But again, you as the VTuber should have kind of looked over everything before you hit the go live button with the auction. Maybe you naively put your full heart's trust in this management and trusting they would handle everything correctly. Between the changes of hands, so much was lost. Essentially, if you're a VTuber with management, right, you kind of act like the boss of your own little company. And if somebody gets fired, like manager 1, and then manager 2 gets brought on in corporate, there is a middle person that serves as the hand handoff between person number 1 and person number 2 that gets hired to fulfill the role. So it looks to me that in whatever is happening with the Dokibird company situation, there was no middleman to make the handoff between manager 1 and manager 2 go smoothly. Being like, hey, manager 1, can you make a list of all the projects we have hanging and then all the things we need to do and then what manager 2 needs to do, like to fill this in, etc. And again, I would say that as the VTuber, the head of the brand, you should have line of sight into what's happening in your company, in the management that's going on. If you have no line of sight, I would argue that's mismanagement of your part because it's your responsibility to make sure things aren't screwing up down below, you know? Again, if the managers are doing little things one-off, etc., the manager dropped the ball, sure. The way a company works, the higher up is the one that gives the okay, that signs off on the project. With companies, even with like a little social media manager that makes a tweet, typically there is a senior social media manager, a senior social producer that looks at the post before it goes live and okays the post to go live. So regardless of whether the person below you screwed up or not, sucks, right? But you as the person above them, as the big boss, should have looked at everything over, made sure it was okay before it went live. So management 1 screwed it up really badly. Partially Doki's fault for having no idea, because how did you not? But maybe because Doki has no experience with PC builds, they just didn't realize, or because of miscommunication, they thought that the budget was okay when it wasn't, right? Hindsight's always 2020, so we can't necessarily fault Doki for not knowing everything because maybe manager lied to them and was like, yeah, the artist said 3,500 was okay when it wasn't okay. So that could be possible. But what I can fault Doki for, and you'll see this later in the document because we just touched upon it, is how the rest of it was handled. Because again, the auction screwed up. The auction for the PC bombed. Like, it was a mess of a situation. Now we have a steaming pile of poop and somebody needs to clean it up and nobody wants to fix it. Literally nobody wants to deal with it. And that is the problem. Who screwed it up and who effed up the auction, in my opinion, is the least of the worries of the situation. Because what we have now is a buyer, a fan of Doki's, who bid $6.6 thousand. So this buyer is out of the money with no PC in hand. That is the big issue here. So who's gonna fix this? At this point, the buyer has now been waiting for 10 months. The artist then apologizes for the buyer's wait and summarizes their health concerns. They then ask about questions they've had about the project. So this is on January 19th, 2025. The artist says, to clarify, I sent over a PDF with details about the project to Doki and team, but to move forward with the project, I need estimated project costs to be confirmed by Doki, to chat about the hardware the buyer would like upgraded, to confirm and discuss shipping details. I can send the hardware list I put together if needed. The components I pre-selected are black, but buyer, what is your preference when it comes to component colorways? This appears to be the first mention of there being a request for 2 PCs, not one, to the artist. The artist never had an agreement with Doki or their management for even 1 PC, the first one they thought, the only one they thought they were building, let alone this second PC that was floating around as an idea. So buyer, is saying, good to hear that your health is back on track, and the buyer says, my understanding in the beginning was it was supposed to be Doki would get one of each item herself, but I believe not long after she got a PC and this probably fell off her radar of things she needed. So I'm not sure if there's a requirement to pair up builds to reduce the workload. So Doki then joins in, apologizing and moving the convo forward. So Doki says, hi, sorry for the late reply to all of this. I'll be reading through the replies. I'll be handling it personally instead of my staff since they're all busy and it was my fault the PC stuff got delayed, since I didn't realize the miscommunication got this bad until I was dragged back in and notified about it a few weeks ago. I really apologize again for the delays on this auction item. If there's something you need from me and I don't reply back in time within 48 hours, just ping me again, because my messages get super swamped every day. Since I don't think I'll be needing another PC, we can allocate the funds to getting the buyer's PC made with the parts they want. Unless you'd like us to have similar PCs to share, I also don't mind as a special feature. Please feel free to let me know. So this is also weird and confusing. Again, Doki had mentioned on stream that she wanted a duplicate of every item so that she could match with the buyer. That's a cute idea. And that wasn't made clear from the Tiltify. The starting bid for the Tiltify was set at $3,500. It was listed as for 1 PC. $3,500 for 1 PC. Here is a PC part picker of what the artist had made, of a previous build the artist made, so you can get an idea of what you're gonna get. Pulling a PC part picker of a previous build without consulting the artist first, not a good idea. The buyer states there's no need for matching PCs, then lists the desired specs. The artist expressed not being comfortable doing enterprise level builds, and the buyer understands, going back and forth on parts and how the build would look like. A chicken versus egg situation happens where Management 3 asks for the part list to determine a quote, whereas the buyer and the artist want to know what the budget is before choosing parts. Below is a screen grab of a convo between Management 1 and the artist about payments that happened early 2024 when this project began. So this is what Management 1 said. Secondly, regarding the payment for the PC, I know that's probably up in the air at the moment, so we can stay in contact and figure that out as the project progresses or as we have a more clear idea of projected cost. I did base the market value off your previous builds, and we would like to stay around that general cost for the parts themselves. By the way, do you see this? We would like to stay around that general cost for the parts themselves. So Manager 1 is telling the artist, we would like to stay around that cost for the parts, the cost of the previous build, the 3,500 USD. So up until this point, the artist, one, thinks there's only one PC, but two, the artist is under the assumption, very, very fairly, because this is exactly what they were told, that the 3,500 USD, which was a wrong number because it should be in British pounds, would be for parts. So the artist up until this point is assuming labor was going to be additional. Whereas Doki and I guess other management 3 is under the assumption the 3,500 USD, the wrong number, is for everything. Parts, PC build, shipping, which Doki said they would pay for everything, was going to be in that 3,500 number. For more context, the buyer had the intention of upgrading the build to their desired specs and was willing to pay out of pocket for the difference between the allotted budget and their desired build. The buyer says, I see. I was working with the mindset of Doki providing her budget, and with that amount, I know how much I may or may not need to add to the pot. For example, if the total was 4K and I'm only willing to contribute 2K, the total would be 6K. Or if the total was then 5K for the budget, I would add 2K and the total would be 7,000, which would give an additional 1,000 for me to choose parts I want. Thus, having an idea of how much I have to work with will undoubtedly affect my choices. So the artist says, I like to emphasize this point as I've been working with the same mindset, replying to the buyer about what the buyer just said. We're both waiting on a budget estimate from Doki as we can't move forward without at least a ballpark. The artist then expresses needing to hear from Doki to continue moving the project forward. And the artist says, at this point, I'm finding it hard to continue dedicating time to the project without Doki's personal involvement. She's the only one who can make key decisions on behalf of her business, and her input is critical to moving things along. I keep sensing that this project might not make financial sense, and I'm genuinely concerned about the risk of not being compensated for the hours I've already put in. Since we don't have any form of contract yet, I haven't been able to establish standard creative industry practices, such as a kill fee. So far, I've already put in significant time with concept art, drafting of proposals, communications, but without a clear budget, I've been shooting in the dark and undercharging my services in the process, in an attempt to make this work with undefined parameters. I really hope that you can understand I can't put in any more hours or change the cost breakdown I've already given until I actually know what the upper limit financial constraints are and what the Doki team is doing to make this work. I want to feel like we're all aligned and giving our best effort to deliver a lovely product to a client who has been waiting for a year. And the buyer says, sad face, with that in mind, to keep the chat on topic, I'll refrain from doing what I said earlier so messages don't get pushed up. Refrain from narrowing down the list of parts. By the way, again, do I really need to indicate and show you guys just how much management is dropping the ball? Because why is it the artist and buyer being the proactive ones here, being like, how can we get this to work? What's the budget? Like, we really need the budget to know what we can work on. Here's what I need from you. Please give me what I need. The management's just like yapping in the back, I guess. And Doki replied a day later. So Doki says, hello everyone, sorry again for the late reply. For the budget, it will be 6 to 7K. I'm willing to squeeze an extra 3 to 400 USD if the parts go over due to the long wait. So the maximum I'm willing to go will be 7.4K, depending on if the parts do go over budget a little bit. So the buyer responds, thank you for getting back to us. However, I believe there's still many points that need to be agreed upon before we may continue any further, specifically between Doki and Doki staff and the artist. If the price of raw parts of the build were originally slated to be around 3.5K, how much was originally additionally to be set aside for the artist's work? Their labor. Does the new budget upward of 7.4K include the cost of labor or not? If so, what percentage of it is supposed to be? Given how things have gone so far, is whatever previous estimate made for the artist's work still the same? And how does the new proposed base budget by Doki play with new estimates? Finally, it would be best if discussions on topics such as shipping, compensation, and some concrete estimates be made between Doki and Management 3 and the artist, probably using 3.5 to 4K of base parts as an estimate. Before work progresses any further, she mentioned wanting to adhere to industry practices, which I believe is a good idea. Without any formality, it makes it too easy for discussions work to proceed before getting canceled and wasting even more of everyone's time. There were obviously additional administrative issues that I have not brought up and are out of my wheelhouse. As Doki previously stated, she will be handling this personally. She should raise such issues. I believe I should not be bringing this up. You know, this is the saddest part. The fact that the buyer is the one advocating for the artist to be paid fairly for their labor, when management number 3 was was trying to get the artist to donate the PC for free. 3 cats in a trench coat would have done a better job than this management, honestly. I can totally see how this was well-meaning, but like the way it was set up was doomed to fail, and then the handling of it afterwards was atrocious. So, Management 3 brings up the total auction amount for the PC being $6,600 and suggesting a refund. So management writes, but keep in mind, the auction offer was $6,600, and Doki is already willing to up that amount. If it goes much further above that upped amount, then honestly, I suggest a refund at that point, because from a management perspective, this already doesn't make much sense to me. But she feels very bad about the long wait and how things have been handled in the past by previous management. The buyer pushes back on this notion and suggests a build estimate. The buyer says, the auction was for charity. That number should not be considered the actual amount for the build. It could have been raised to $20K if we had additional dedicated bidders. Additionally, as it is charity, it is against the spirit to use that as the budget cost. I believe there should be an actual fixed price for this build that should have existed regardless of the charity auction bid. This is why I asked the question regarding the original and current budget. So the original build estimate was $3,500 for parts plus the artist's labor estimated at auction time plus administrative fees. So the current build estimate is $3.5K for parts that are subject to change plus the artist's labor estimated at auction time, plus the artist's labor post-auction, plus administrative fees and hassle fees, plus Doki's new contributions. The question is then who is paying for it and how much is the artist's labor estimated at auction time? If this value and was always approximately $3,500, then Doki's new contribution might as well be zero, and I will be responsible for any additional fees incurred. This is why I wanted clarification to all and more of the questions above. It is possible that the 7K figure which Doki has to contribute, the real cost of the build, has not changed, therefore leading to a convenient misconception that there were additional funds diverted to this now that Doki is not obtaining a PC from Redacted. Where again, it's confusing because there's so many moving parts, because there was the talk of the second PC. So in the previous estimate, the artists provided to management, they undercharged their labor at minimum wage because they felt pressure to accommodate the unspoken budget of $3,500. Again, the $3,500 USD quote is based only off PC parts and never accounted for labor costs. Remember, that was literally what Management 1 said. Quote, I did base the market value off your previous builds and we would like to stay around that general cost for the parts themselves. End quote, referring to $3,500 USD. The buyer advocates for the artist to be paid fairly for labor. So this is just me with a little tinfoil hat, okay? But to me, it smells like Manager 3 kind of wanted to like try to beat down the artist and buyer enough times so that they could get the artist to like say they were going to do the build for free, to like give in essentially, or to do the build for not charging for labor so they could only have to pay $3,500 for parts USD and then he get away with it. That's what it kind of feels to me like what Manager 3 is trying to do. You'll see later because the language gets a little manipulative in my opinion, but that's my little tinfoil hat theory. Okay, I'm not claiming that's what that actually is what it's happening. My little conspiracy theory. Twirling my mustache over here. So the artist says, my rate at the time of auction would have been £32 per hour. I've lightly tweaked the cost breakdowns these past weeks to match with market fluctuations for components, but being fully honest and open here, I am undercharging my fees at £13.85 per hour, which is the UK London living wage. I thought that by undercharging, it could alleviate the financial pressure that seemed to be getting in the way with the budget, and I wanted to make sure the project got honored because it's for charity. The minimum base rate I should be charging is £32 per hour. And then the artist responds to Doki getting a PC. The artist is like, wait, Doki was obtaining a PC from me? I'm out of the loop because I'm confused about an extra PC that keeps being mentioned. From my understanding of going through this, the only time Doki had mentioned getting like a second PC or like a duplicate was on stream. It wasn't mentioned in the tweets that Doki put out that the artist applied to be one of the people chosen to make stuff for the charity. And it was never mentioned in DMs to the artist. The artist had no idea. So again, how the hell did the artist find out over 10 months later that there was supposed to be a second PC? Management 3 explains how the charity auction was set up with a formula that makes absolutely no sense for how these functions typically go. It will be shown later as well, but typically for charity auctions, all items auctioned off are donated by generous donors. People bid on the item, and the total sum of what is bid on is donated to charity. For example, 5 people donate PCs. The host will then auction the PCs, they'll raise, I don't know, 100K, and thus all 100K minus processing fees will go to the charity. The host doesn't pay for PCs because it was explicitly noted they were a donation with the sole purpose of raising the money for charity. This is the fault of the first management team that set this auction up. Most of the cases with charity auctions, again, people donate the item. Any amount donated, even if $1, that is profit. Not profit in your pocket, but profit for the charity to go to the charity as a donation. The issue comes up is if you're buying an item to then donate. And the item wasn't paid for yet, okay? That is why this screwed up so badly, because they're donating a custom commission item from an artist that was not completed yet. They never figured out how much it was supposed to cost. So when they set the original number, so it kind of makes sense to be like, well, whatever the product is, we're gonna buy it. We're gonna set the base cost. So the base cost will be the cost of the product, and then anything extra would go to charity. But you fail to consider hidden fees, operating costs, whatever. And especially when it comes to custom built PCs, a product that is really expensive to build. It's fair for it to cost the way it does, right? You pay for labor, the expertise, right? Any little screw up, the PC doesn't work, high risk, high reward. Those things are always going to cost more. But I think nobody in this process, including Doki, realized how expensive a custom PC is. The price was astronomically way too low. It should have been minimum bid 7.5K, like straight up minimum bid. And I feel like anybody with like custom PC experience, which I don't even have any really, would look at the 3.5K number and be like, how am I getting this for this much? Because that's not adding up. It's way too low. But again, not the buyer's responsibility. So manager 3 says, hey buyer, I understand what you're saying, but you seem to be missing a few parts. Regularly in charity auctions, there is an existing item or service donated, and people bid on this, raising the maximum amount for a good cause. Previous management and Doki set this auction up totally differently. Basically, Dokibird is paying for a lot of these items fully herself. Might as well donate the money directly at that point in my view. Why this was set up this way baffles me until this day, and that's why, as you can sense, my need to stay within and around the offered amount, hence my remark. Which, okay, this also to me makes no sense. Quote, basically Dokibird is paying for a lot of these items fully herself, end quote. One, that should never happen in a charity setup, but two, Dokibird never spent a single cent at this point on this PC, from my understanding. I read through like the entire group chat messages between all of these people. A cent never left Doki's pocket at this point, for this PC specifically, maybe for other stuff, not about the PC. I understand the artist's POV, and I don't know how the original quote came to be without it being fully completed and transparent before the then Doki team communicated it during the auction. Hence, we got an odd situation that we need clarity on. We need a fixed pricing and what it would cost fully so we can decide further if everything fits correctly. I thought the money from the buyer went to charity and Doki is funding the PC as a prize. The auction money did go to the charity. That's how Tiltify works. So the way Tiltify works, you donate straight to Tiltify, it goes out of Tiltify into the charity. Doki doesn't touch the money from my understanding. Tiltify takes a 5% processing fee. That's it. Okay, so Doki is gonna pay for the PC, or that was the intention. It makes more sense. I personally just think, operationally speaking, for a charity, messy. Like it's very messy, because then you end up with stuff like this. So it's a price match thing. Like the money goes to the charity and Doki pays for the item. That means you have to price match an entire auction, which is wild. Well, she'll only have to pay for the products and everything else goes to the charity. That makes more sense as to why Doki was like, I want a matching PC, because she was just gonna probably pay for it herself. That's probably why. Out of her own pocket. So the buyer wasn't gonna pay for it. Okay, so that clears that up. I literally read through this like 4 times and this is so confusing. We're gonna operate on the assumption that Doki is paying out of pocket for the PC and price matching essentially the auction. So manager 3 says, buyer, I understand what you're saying, but you seem to be missing a few parts. Regularly in charity auctions, there is an existing item or service donated, and people bid on this, raising the maximum amount for a good cause. Previous management and Doki set this auction up totally differently. Basically, Dokibird is paying for a lot of these items fully herself. Might as well donate the money directly at that point in my view. Why this was set up this way baffles me until this day. That's why, as you can sense, my need to stay within or around the offered amount, hence my remark. I understand the artist POV, and I don't know how the original quote came to be without it being fully transparent before the then Doki team communicated it during the auction. Hence, we got an odd situation that we need clarity on. We need a fixed pricing, what it would cost fully so we can decide further if everything fits correctly. Dokibird is willing to pay an additional amount as shown above since it's for charity, and you've been waiting for a year on your item, and we feel really horrid about that. However, until this day, we still don't know what the PC would cost exactly with all the factors and additional requests regarding specs. To keep it simple in layman terms, currently we don't know if the artist's custom PC would cost 5K or 10K to make, and I will need to know this first so we can decide what to do. The artist and the artist assistant, can you provide a fixed price rating with what you would normally charge and include those elements? We don't want you to go underprice yourself, and I'm sorry on my end if it came across as that. All I want to know is the full and completed pricing so we can make a decision instead of talking about it in different ways. Personally, while I do understand this could be Management 3's way of making all aspects of the auction transparent, it feels a bit guilt-trippy. Regardless regardless of charity or not, the artist was contacted for their services under the guise it would be paid for. The artist then provides a spreadsheet with updated pricing. Here is the spreadsheet, and two options were provided, option 1, option 2, where in option 1, they priced themselves at their fair rate of £32 per hour at the time of auction, and option 2, they priced themselves at London's minimum wage, or whatever the UK London living wage is. So you can see the total estimated cost in USD for option 1 is $11,000, for option 2 is $8,800 with the really, really low labor pricing. So Dokibird responds 2 days later, clearing up their side, writing, "I just finished reading through everything. I didn't give input on what Manager 3 has mentioned earlier, and it was his own opinion, in case anyone was wondering that it was my idea. But it was his own, and he wanted to fix things as soon as possible since I wasn't online or was busy to reply in time. I was originally going to get a copy of each auction item, so each person was going to make 2, which should have been communicated to you from my previous management. So I wasn't sure why you weren't informed as other creators were. And I have received the other auction items. But since I already have a custom PC, I'd rather just use the funding to make the PC that the buyer deserves instead of making 2. Regarding the pricing, originally what I told from my previous management, the creator gave us the base price of what it should cost, and we put that as the original opening bid, and was what it should cost to commission the items and what I needed to pay. At one point, I had to also pay what the bid ended for a few times, while for the majority of others, it was the original base cost. And the huge miscommunication error is one of the reasons why they don't work for me anymore, since the auction was set up all over the place. That's why we put 3K original as the starting bid, as that was what I was informed would be the cost, as the original bid is what the item should cost, and the ending bid item should never be less than what I actually paid for, which is the case for majority of the items in the auctions as I paid for the original starting cost bid. I'm unsure how they messed up the communication, since the original person who communicated with people does not work for me anymore. Again, here Doki mentions a few points that had led to the massive miscommunication this build has now become. Firstly, the idea Doki was going to get an identical copy of each item auctioned to twin with the winners. This was never mentioned to the artist, so up until the previous time it was mentioned, for almost an entire year the artist was under the assumption they were making 1 PC, not 2. Secondly, being the quote arbitrarily pulled from a previous build the artist did and using the wrong currency, pricing the build at 3,500 USD. Not only is that number incorrect because of the currency and not including labor costs, that number only accounts for the parts of 1 PC, not 2. So the artist responds, in their Excel sheet they provided 2 options, with option 2 pricing their hourly rates back at minimum wage. And then the artist says, hey guys, thanks for your patience while I've been tied up with self-assessment stuff. Doki, after taking some time to process, I can't accommodate my pricing to the rate in option 2, and I really apologize for offering that and any confusion or inconvenience. While I am sympathetic to the challenges you faced with previous management, I feel that I've been placed in a position to undercharge to align with your staff's current expectations. This has put me at a disadvantage, as the rate I initially proposed in option 2 doesn't reflect ethical standards for creative work. I appreciate your staff's apology for the miscommunication, as instead I can shift my focus towards providing the best of my professional services. Making sure that I'm paid a fair rate in line with creative industries is tantamount to delivering a great product, and I'm committed to collaborating with you and the buyer on this. Going forward, I like to ensure I can feel comfortable and confident in my professional skills. I'll be providing my standard work contract and a pro forma invoice which reflects ethical pricing and cost estimates to the best of my ability. I should also let you know that I have a window of availability to complete this work, as I have other bookings scheduled for quarter 2 and my rate is due to increase in the new financial year. I estimate that the project will take around a month to complete, so ideally if we can get everything agreed, signed, and started by the end of week, it will help make sure we can get the project done in a timely manner and still have wiggle room in case of unforeseen delays. Instead of lowering my rate for the invoice, I'm discounting the additional fees, admin, extra hours, etc., that would have typically been charged for. This means that even if the additional fees increase, they will remain discounted without being detrimental to my standard rate, and you won't need to worry about the cost of my fees ticking up before we get to the project officially underway. I've also cut a clause regarding revisions out of the contract so the buyer can freely request revisions in line with the original scope if he chooses. Is there an email address I can send the documents to, and would you be able to provide me with your business address info, Doki? If you'd like to discuss any parts or have more questions, please feel free to let me know. I really hope we can put the initial challenges we've had so far behind us and come to an agreement to get this rolling. Instead, they discounted additional fees to try and keep the project within scope of the newly expressed budget of 7.4K. Doki Doki, while on vacation, responds. They go back and forth with the artist about the pricing of the build. Doki writes, I'm on my vacation right now, but is there a way to find a middle ground regarding this, as the initial bidding was your option number 2, even if it was in euros, which I was okay with accommodating, but now the price increased dramatically. I've had multiple PC builders that were in consideration when approaching me for the custom as a charity item, so it feels a bit out of a bigger mess to deal with, as I'm paying out of my own pocket for the final build that would cost more than what I was told initially, and a lot more than what the item was won for. I've actually been trying to fix this during my first vacation in years, so I apologize if I worded things wrong, since I'm typing on my phone while out. If I misunderstand from what I read, option 2 was proposed as a way to help out charity and for a good cause in the initial plannings for the auction. I'm hoping we can negotiate something that fits both, as it was a charity item for a good cause, and this has been an item that suffered the most issues. The opening bid should have been what the original base price was, with upgrades later if the bidding goes higher, so I hope to find a middle ground. If we don't, I understand, and if you feel uncomfortable and wish to take service elsewhere and focus your other projects, then I also understand, and I would look for other builders for the buyer, since I would try my best to give them the PC they've been waiting for. This to me is really gross. I'm gonna be straight blunt. I want to be empathetic. I get it. You're a busy creator. You're on your first vacation in years, so you want to relax, which is chill and all. Again, this wouldn't be an issue if this was sorted like a way longer, you know? Like if you responded faster before your vacation, then this wouldn't have been an issue over your vacation. But this to me reads very manipulative, because I'm on my vacation and it's the first one I've done in like years. Da, 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 da. That's not the buyer or the artist problem, you know? The buyer and the artist spent so long trying to get you guys to respond, trying to move this forward, and you guys keep like spinning things back. And then 2, I want to break this down. Regarding this as the initial bidding was your option number 2. The initial bidding was not option number 2, meaning the artist undercuts their wages and charges minimum wage. That wasn't the initial bidding. The initial bidding was only for PC parts and never accounted for labor. So that's wrong. And then 3, even if it was in euros, which I was okay with accommodating. This to me also reads manipulative, because what do you mean? You have to be okay with accommodating this because you plus your team fucked this up. You didn't directly fuck it up, but your management one was the one that screwed up and got the currency incorrect. So because your team screwed it up, your team now has to absorb the cost of the error. It's not I did you a favor for accommodating this. No, you had to do it because your team screwed it up. But now the pricing increases dramatically. Yes, the price will increase dramatically if you didn't account for labor costs in the original price, which was, again, your team's error. Did Doki know about this? No. Also, it's in pounds, it's not in euros, but that's like a whole side issue. Anyways, now 5, I don't like how Doki writes. I've had multiple builders that were in consideration for the PC custom build as a charity item, so it feels like a bigger mess as I'm paying out of my own pocket. Sure, you have multiple builders that were in consideration, whatever. You chose this builder. So now you gotta rock with it because you chose this builder. You know what it feels weird to be like, well, there are other people willing to do it for cheaper. That's how I read it as, and I don't like that at all, because I don't like it when people put freelancers and artists in a bidding war to see who can bid themselves down for the cheapest possible service. That to me feels very exploitative. It feels very manipulative to do that, because that's what it reads to me like, oh, other people are willing to do it cheaper, so why couldn't you? Like that's to me the undertone. And then 6, all this like charity, you know. Option 2, so the artist undercutting their prices a lot, was proposed as a way to help out charity and for a good cause in the initial plannings for the auction. I'm hoping we can negotiate something that fits both, as it was a charity item for a good cause. Yeah, it's for charity. It's not the artist's charity, nor did the artist agree to donate something for charity. The artist agreed in the understanding that they were going to be fairly compensated for their service, and whatever charity stuff was happening was on your end. You know, they were just going to get paid to make the PC. That's what they thought was going to happen. And trying to guilt trip the artist to undercharge their rate so much for charity is, to me, icky, because that to me reads really entitled. I know charity is great. Donating to charity is amazing. If you can't donate, please donate. Charities need your money. But trying to guilt freelancers and artists into like undercharging themselves hella for a charity you wanted to do gave them the impression they were going to be paid fairly for. It sucks that you can't pay rent this month, but it's okay because it's for charity. By the way, don't message me on vacation. That's what it reads as. And like, look, I want to be empathetic because maybe they're frustrated, so the wording is bad and it comes off funky, but the way I read this reads to me very manipulative. It's just weird. To be blunt, I don't know how much money Doki has, but can you just suck it up and take the L and shell the money out and just be like, just let me know how much it costs. I'll pay it. We can deal with this and then we'll move on. Maybe it is too expensive and it's way too out of Doki's budget, which in that case, I would say again, you reasonably should have known how much a PC build of this scale would cost, but just take the L, man. Call it a day. All of these screw ups with the charity, you know, the price being too high, the currency being wrong, the labor cost being higher than you expected, you being on vacation. How is this the fault of the buyer and the artist? That is between you and your team. You and your team need to sort this out. So the artist says, just to clarify, option number 2 was what I came up with during the last few weeks speaking to manager number 3. It was suggested at first I should just be donating the PC, and then to make the PC plus work plus shipping fit into the minimum amount the auction was originally listed for, which is $3,500 USD. So I felt under pressure to try and fit within the confines of that, which is why I undercharged so much. And then in reply to the buyer being like, the auction was for charity, the number shouldn't be considered, the artist says, I also think that the buyer made a really good point. So then Doki says, yes, but the charity auction was set up where the base price should be the amount of how much the labor and item will cost. That's the information he was not aware of. And what the previous management was supposed to tell all creators, which is what majority of the creators were made aware. But some select fews weren't, which includes this item. And the artist says this is where your previous staff made the error, which is facts. And Doki says, that's why a lot of items were different pricing and wasn't just $1 to start off, as all creators were supposed to inform me of what the base price was, and why the item started off as $3,000 for the starting bid. As I was informed, that was the base price to set the auction item as. This was the only item where the commissioner piece is higher than what the item auction ended as. So that's why I wish to find a middle ground if possible, but if not, and you feel uncomfortable, I understand. I just feel uncomfortable the most that the charity received is less than what the item is gonna be, as that was not something that should have happened, and one of the reasons why the previous management in charge was let go for mishandling it. I do have to add, does this mean Doki's a shit person? No, this is a one-off situation that was horribly handled. This is just a really bad situation that happened with Doki. Being a good person doesn't mean every single action you've done is good. You know, you can have fuck ups here and there, but overall you try to trend toward positive, you know what I mean? And a net's higher. But this just is a situation that she massively mishandled. Probably because you could be a good person and a good creator and really bad at managerial aspects of things, which is what's looking like what's happening here. Again, this isn't like her as a personality, but it's just she is managing this badly, like really badly. To me, this just reads weird again because like basically they keep going back and forth because Doki keeps going on and on about how much the previous management fucked up, which is like, yeah, we're aware of that. But we're trying to work towards a solution to fix the problem. But it kind of reads to me like Doki is trying to like get the artist to lower their prices. If you read between the lines, right? Because here it's like the base price should be how much the labor and item will cost. And like the manager should have told people, but they didn't, which includes this item, which is again, the previous staff's problem. Management number 1 fucked up. We know that. And so here Doki's explaining more about how the fuck up happened, why the fuck up happened, where, like who, what, when, where, why, of how the fuck up happened, but who cares? Because whatever got us to this point does not matter, okay? What should be discussed, which is what Doki is not really discussing here, which is again, just shows that their managerial skills may not be the best here. We just need to discuss how to move forward, not how this happened. We already know how this happened. And the artist says, the charity receiving less than what the item is going for is gonna be regrettable, and I share your feelings. If the price hadn't been valued the way that it was, we could have perhaps avoided the outcome. It makes me sad that's not the case because it would have been for a good cause that we both really believe in. I want you to know that I'm not upping the cost for the sake of it. I have to work from a standard rate to be able to make ends meet, and I'm hopeful you can understand. If it would help, I can share the past invoice from the build this PC is based from. It's about 2 years old, and I was paid both in hardware and 7.1 thousand British pounds to make the build. The hardware itself amounted to 3.5 thousand British pounds, so the total build came out to 10.6 thousand British pounds. Of course, I do want to figure this out together, and it would mean a lot if we're able to do that in a way that values my work also. And Doki adds, I would like to find a middle ground as I really cannot in what I believe or in faith to have the item be just extremely more than what the charity received. If we could find a middle ground for this, maybe donate some of the money to charity itself as well, where it's around that, but a portion of that goes to charity. This again, it just reads so out of touch to me. Like, I get that Doki is really gung-ho about charity and all that stuff. Like, that's great. Good for you. I love that for you, right? We need people very, very involved and who advocate for charity. How is this the artist's fault? How is this the artist's responsibility that your team screwed up? What do you mean? If we could find a middle ground and donate some money to charity? You know what this reads? I don't care how good your cause is, okay? This reads to me as, can you do the work for free? Because again, that's what it is. Being painted over as it's for a good cause, it's for charity. Again, donating money to charity doesn't keep the lights on in the artist's house. Donating money to charity does not keep food on the artist's table. You can't guilt trip the artist to try to make the artist donate something to charity when this entire situation was built upon the idea the artist was going to be compensated fairly for their service of the PC build. Like, it just reads to me like you don't want to pay. Like I said, what happened, right? What happened is there is a big, hot, steaming pile of crap because people dropped the ball. Who dropped the ball doesn't matter. Now there's a big, stinking pile of poop that somebody needs to clean up. And the responsibility to clean it is Doki, and Doki doesn't want to do it. I get morally it could feel weird to pay more than what the charity got. That is an inevitable situation that could happen based on how this charity was set up. Is it Doki's fault it ended up like this? Partially. She should have known because she should have double checked the charity before it went live. But overall, manager 1 screwed up. Regardless though, now we have a bidder who is out 6.6k USD for a PC, and an artist who has been communicating for months on end trying to sort this out, and nothing has happened. And the artist is wasting all of your time. And still, no talks of payment, because it's all I hear is, how can I not pay the artist? That's what it sounds like right now. The artist then sends an updated invoice where 3,800 British pounds is discounted off the cost, making the total build price 8,622. So you can see that right here. And then the artist says, that amount of my services already rendered, that's gone to charity. And then Doki says, like I said earlier, this is almost 5,000 more than what the charity ended with, which is what made me uncomfortable, as I really believe the charity amount should be closer. I was open if it was $1,000 more, but this is what makes me uncomfortable. Okay. Also, privilege take. Maybe I am also coming off privilege. If your die-hard hill you're dying on is that the charity received less money than the product, then you pay for both to fix the situation. Like, in the best case scenario, this is the way to right all the wrongs that happened. Is it your fault it happened? Mostly no. But now it's happened. We have a bunch of people being strung along this long. If this is the hill you're dying on, if the PC build is $8,600 and the buyer donated $6,600, again, wrong currencies, right? But like roughly estimating, you donate $4,000 to charity to make up the difference that the charity didn't get, and you pay for the PC. That is the best scenario. I don't know how much you have to say it, like how many times you need to write it out. It's not going to change it. Doki and Manager 3 over and over again says, oh, this is like way more than what the charity ended with. Doesn't matter. It happened. It's now happened. The charity is over. The charity received 6.6 thousand USD, and the PC build is going to cost at least 10,000 USD. Those are two facts. So now how are we going to fix it? This is not arriving to a solution. The artist assistant says, out of curiosity, how much of the 6.6 thousand USD of the buyer's money did the charity receive? Doki says, all of it. It goes directly to the charity, and I don't receive any money as it transfers directly to the organization. And the artist's assistant says, sorry if it was an odd question, was just trying to make sure I'm following correctly. And Doki says, since it's done via Tiltify. So yeah, makes sense. Doki feels, quote, uncomfortable that the charity received less than what the item is going to be, end quote. This is confusing as the auction was hosted on Tiltify, a platform where donors will donate money directly to Tiltify. Tiltify holds the money for 14 days before releasing it to the chosen charity. All of the money raised has already been transferred to the select charity. Alternatively, Doki could be suggesting they're uncomfortable with the buyer having paid lower than the face value of the PC build, with them donating 6.6k USD and the build valued at around 11k USD, making it a 5k difference. Just suck it up, man. I'm gonna give a personal anecdote, okay? There was one time I filmed a video about a VTuber. The video was edited by my editor. It was on my YouTube channel as unlisted. Then the VTuber had made a post writing, I feel really uncomfortable with people making videos about my situation. News YouTuber specifically, which includes me. And I saw that and I was like, oh shit, okay, not gonna post the video. I never told my editor to not post the video. I had the video unlisted. It was not scheduled. Then my editor, because I upload once a day, noticed that I did not have a video scheduled for the day. So my editor uploaded the video without me knowing. I was asleep because we're in different time zones. My editor's in Europe, I'm in the US. My editor uploaded the video. He didn't know that there was a tweet that the VTuber expressed they didn't want people to talk about it. The VTuber was upset because they were upset about the way it was titled, whatever. And then so the editor changed the title and the VTuber was even more upset. Also, for clarity, English is not my editor's first language, so it came off weird probably because it's not his first language. I woke up at like 4 p.m. because I wake up really late and I saw all of this going down. All of this was happening over the course of 6 hours and I had no idea because I was asleep. I've now talked to my editor. He will not upload videos. I will only be the one that uploads the videos. He will not post videos without me knowing. it's honest mistake, happens. You know, I saw something, I didn't communicate it to my editor. I was like, I'm not gonna post it. But regardless, it happened. The video was live now, and the VTuber was upset. So I was like, oh shoot, this is really bad. I took the video down immediately, and I sent the VTuber money as an apology for the screw up. I did not make the mistake because I was literally asleep. But regardless, the damage was done, it happened, and the editor is an extension of me because it was on my channel. So to fix it, I paid the VTuber. I am so sorry. I made like no money off the video because it wasn't live for very long, but I gave them like what, you know, I felt would be fair for like the compensation for it, etc. And we called it a day. Even if you didn't fuck up, if it's a fuck up of your team or an extension of you, it falls on you and you have to clean up the mess. Okay. Did you poop there? No, but then now it's in your house. So you got to clean it. Like, I'm the face of the brand, even though I didn't do it. The damage was done as a reflection of my brand. That's just what you gotta do. Like, it is what it is. Of course, I never publicly talked about it because it's not relevant. I'm not trying to virtue signal. I just did it all behind the closed doors and called it a day. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because you gotta fix your problems even if you weren't the one that caused it, if it is part of your team. So Doki says, no, I understand regarding that. The 5K is just after your amount was deducted. All 250,000 that was raised went directly to the org via Tiltify, and I touched none of the money. And I spent my own personal money on all the items that were sent to the winners. I just personally feel that the charity shouldn't receive significantly less than what the auction item cost, and that's why I hope we can find a middle ground. If anything, maybe we can have a portion of that money donated directly to the charity and not just deducted from the costs. And the artist says it's not just deducted from the total cost you pay. And Doki says even then, the charity still receives significantly less from the auction item and cost, and that's what made me uncomfortable with it being a 15K PC. Doki then suggests a portion of the money, likely referring to the cost of the build, be donated to the charity. This feels unfair. While the sentiment of wanting charity to receive a fair amount is notable and a suggestion at a compromise, it's not Doki's money to give. This would be implying that the artist should undercharge themselves even more just to accommodate the miscommunicated budget. Management 3 begins pushing back on the quotes. Management 3 says, artist and assistant, we have received a few different quotes by now, and all quotes have big differences in pricing and keep going up. When we started, you asked for a budget. We said around 7K, and now we're getting a quote for 15K USD, excluding shipping and taxes. Could you show me where you and old management agreed on the designer standard fee and what has been delivered on that? Where does this number come from? Perhaps it's me being lost, but usually quotes are provided, you agree on a quote and things get made and paid in set agreed times based on the quote, or am I missing something? Management and artists go back and forth on the quotes. The reason for the quotes changing is due to the artists feeling pressured by management, both previous and current, to lower their prices to accommodate their budget that wasn't fully communicated. Management then tries to alleviate blame from themselves, and the artist assistant steps up. So Management 3 says there's been multiple things gone wrong, not only mismanagement on our end, just to be clear. This is again weird. Just own that you fucked up. Trying to like point fingers at the artist for having a medical issue, which caused them to not be able to respond. Sorry, you have health issues. Your fault. Suck it up. Like, what? And regardless, the artist apologized, right? The assistant says, I'm sorry, this has not been sitting well with me today and I have to speak up. I feel this is a horrible pointed remark to make Manager 3 and is wildly inappropriate and unprofessional. Doki and the artist have stepped up to own and apologize multiple times for missteps on both sides, and these things have been heard, understood, and sympathized with in order to draw a line under it and to see if there is a solution to be made with the regrettable circumstances we now have. Given explanations as to why certain things have happened the way they did does not equate to making excuses for it or trying to absolve blame. I think that's simple enough to understand. I really feel like the negotiations that Doki and the artists were engaging in have been undercut now, and we've reached a point where all discussions should be left to them with very minimal interruptions. At Doki, I'm sorry if my short question about the charity money was rude and out of hand. I was curious if the auction was done as, quote, all proceeds get donated, end quote, or if it was 100% of profits, since that would have made a huge difference in how much money you'd be shortfalling for this item. I should have elaborated. Perhaps attention can return to the negotiations if either feel there are further points of clarity needed. Why does all of the outside parties, the buyer, the artist, and the artist assistant, have to step in and keep this on track and professional when Manager 3 is being weird and gaslighting about all this stuff? So the artist then requests compensation for their time. They're like, good morning, everyone. This isn't a message I like to be sending, but at this point, I feel I have no choice. After all this hard work without payment, I feel my efforts and work have been consistently undervalued and am formally requesting to be paid for the work I have already completed. I don't feel comfortable proceeding with this build further until I am, at a minimum, compensated for the time and effort I've already put into this project. Please find attached below the estimated invoice for my services if you wish to proceed with the build. The estimated total required for this project will be 8,600 British pounds. The amount required prior to completing this work totals to 3,800 pounds, taking £3,800 off the invoice attached. To break down these costs for you, the build estimate itself totals £3,100, comprised of the following, and they attached a little spreadsheet. The artist says, if you prefer to cancel the collaboration and proceed to work on this build with another PC builder, a flat fee licensing agreement will be required. The cost will come to 25% of the invoice total before any deductions at 3,000 British pounds. This is to protect my original concept and ensure I am compensated fairly as the copyright owner, as I'm sure you can understand much time and effort has been put into creating this design. Alternatively, if you wish to cancel entirely, the amount payable will be 3,840 British pounds for services already rendered and 6,600 USD refunded to the buyer. Again, this is not a message I want to send, but I truly feel like I have exhausted all other options. I do not feel like I've been listened to or communicated with in a way I expect from a major project such as this. I'm happy to discuss this further and clarify any items. However, I believe I should be paid for the work I have currently completed for free. I cannot continue further until the contract is signed and returned, and the services rendered so far are paid in full. Additionally, I want to clarify something regarding the financial aspect of this auction. While I understand this was a charity project, I recently looked into tax implications of charitable donations in Canada. Typically, Canada offers tax relief on charitable donations. However, since the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation is a US nonprofit, it only qualifies for deductions if the donor has US income. If a significant portion of your Twitch revenue, sponsorships, or other earnings are from US sources, this means you may already be recouping some or all of the donation costs through the tax relief. Canadian tax laws allows donations to US charities to be deducted up to the amount of US source income earned that tax year, which means the financial burden of fulfilling this project may not be as high as it seems. Given this, I hope financial constraints are not the reason for further delays in settling this matter fairly. At this stage, this is no longer a charity discussion. It's about ensuring that work I have completed is fairly compensated and that the auction's obligations are honored. At everyone. Yeah, so the overall charity, out of Doki's mouth, raised 250,000 USD. A lot of deductions. Doki writes, hello, I have not taken any tax deductibles from this charity as the money is not mine. I would like to clarify that. And yeah, okay, so this one is a little bit of a tricky scenario because like the way Tiltify works is Doki does stuff and then other people send money through a platform for Tiltify, so the artist doesn't touch the money. You get a tax deduction from my understanding, and I'm not familiar with Canadian tax laws, but in the US, if you donate directly to charity, not if other people donate through something you did. But Doki writes, all the money paid is via my own personal account towards the artist, not related at any business. I am not making any profit through this or doing it for tax reasons, which is concerning you think that. By the way, I want to add, Doki I think reads this as a negative, as like something like accusatory. I think Doki thinks it's like a slight on her as a person, like a personal attack. Oh, you think I'm gonna like profit from this or whatever. No. I mean, I think the artist is trying to do is just reassure you that maybe you're stressed about it costing a lot and that it just seems like the artist is trying to reassure you, hey, it's not going to be as much as you think because there's going to be a write-off about it. So like, you know, you do save some money. That's the way I read it as. I don't read it as like a personal attack on Doki's moral character, but maybe I read it wrong. Doki says, please understand that my staff and I are trying to work with you, and when you disappeared for 6 months due to medical reasons, your communication with us was lost and mixed up during our swap of management. I have never done any tax deductibles via charity events, as all the donations are given directly via my fans, and I never felt right with using it as tax purposes, as I've never done so ever in my life, and it really saddens me that it was assumed so. I feel like if that was the image you see of me, then I shall remove myself from this conversation, as it deeply hurts to know you think of me this way. I really did want to fix this, as I took time out of my vacation to assist in a matter that my staff told me not to get involved in. Since the communication has gone towards this, my staff would now negotiate with you regarding compensation, and I shall remove myself from the convo. My staff and accountant can vouch I have never used charity as a tax deductible, despite them thinking I'm an idiot for doing so, but charity is what I fully believe in. I want to add also, again, I'm gonna be blunt. I don't care if it was your vacation. Like, it sucks that you had to work on your vacation. You wouldn't have had to work on your vacation if this was solved earlier. You know what I mean? Like, it taking this long is partially your fault, and it running into your vacation is also partially your fault. Like, it sucks that the artist got sick, right? Happens. But the artist was like reaching out in December about being like, how can we move this forward? Da 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 da. And this dragged on till the end of January. Basically because you guys are like a brick wall, Doki and plus management number 3, where the artist is like, how can we move forward? Here's a proposed rate. Here are the parts. Give me a budget. And they're like, I don't know. Tell me how much it's going to cost. And then I'll tell you budget. And they're like, no, but we need the budget to figure out the parts. And that back and forth, because management 3 and as an extension Doki was unwilling to budge on like anything, was what made the communication take this long, which is why you now had to work on your vacation. Like, it sucks, but I don't want to be like it's your fault, but it kind of is. As an aside, It's very noble to not want to profit off of charity work in any way. I use the term profit loosely, including tax deductions. While I do see the morality in that decision, charity tax deductions exist to incentivize people to donate, as well as providing a legal loophole for tax evasion, which is a whole separate convo. And in my personal opinion, it is perfectly fine to receive deductions as such. In fact, I'd even argue that receiving tax deductions from your charity auctions should be encouraged, as that extra money saved will allow creators like Doki to continue hosting charity events, as well as have an emergency fund of saved earnings in case a financial discrepancy situation like this arises. That's the thing. I totally get your moral compass. I get your moral high ground of like charity and all this. Like, it seems like Doki really loves charity. I love that for you. Again, like I said prior, we need more people advocating for charities and donating to charities and hosting events, especially people with platforms. We need that. Your moral high ground of like not wanting to take a tax break is just hurting yourself. Nobody would ever fault you for taking a tax deduction on charity, with the exception of, if I don't know, if you're like Trump or something doing some funky shit to avoid taxes. That's a whole separate issue. But as a creator who hosts charity events, people want you to host more, and we want you to stress less. So if taking a tax deduction will do both, it's a win-win for everybody. You save more money, so you stress less about finances. Then you get to host more charity events, and we can give more to charity. It's literally a win-win-win all around. My final point still stands, where if you do have this moral ground of you want the charity to get at least the amount the PC is worth, you pay for it out of your pocket, because those are your morals. So why does somebody else have to bend over backwards to accommodate your moral compass? Management 3 then pushes back on the issue of payment. Management 3 says, I have removed Manager 1 and Doki from the convo. Please inform me what services were rendered for the 3.4 thousand quote, and what was the formal agreement. We will not be planning on using the design for the winner's PC, so I would like to know what this entails, as it's almost the same price as the auction itself for a non-delivered item and a mock-up or quote. Dokibird is not involved and does not have input in further discussions, as the staff will now be taking over this matter. Which, this is dangerous. I think this is very dangerous for the person who is spearheading all of this, essentially Doki, it's her charity, to be out of the conversation. I get it, I guess her feelings are hurt, but this is gonna go to shit because there's no line of sight of Doki. Doki has no line of sight into what was being told to the artist, no line of sight to what was being told to the buyer, etc. And that is how we arrived here. And now that Doki left, Doki will no longer have line of sight to, once again, what is being talked about the pricing and stuff like that. And when you play telephone, going back and forth with a whole bunch of people like this is how you lose information and miscommunication springs up. So Management 3 says, but there have been zero communications during the project. No quote, no asking for feedback or approval. We'd be willing to discuss some sort of payment, but nothing has been shown or delivered from our POV at the moment. And pricing seemed to go up every time we're talking. So please provide me sufficient evidence of work being finished on your end with the next few hours or so. Because at the moment I have zero to go on, but your word that things have been completed. This is usually not how to do business. Complete things without a quote, asking for a pretty high amount, more than the charity auction fair market value, and then asking for the work that hasn't been communicated on. Then implying we are unprofessional and the streamer might be pocketing cash, while the bidder, her fan not yours, is the still in the conversation and then asking to add him back into the convo while we already decided to not continue from the provided quotes. Manager 3 is icky, guys. A few points to add. In the industry, services are paid for regardless of whether they're used or not. Even if there's no intention to use the mock-up the artist made, they should still be paid for the design. Secondly, while this wasn't the intention behind Management 3's words, pricing not only includes parts, shipping, and labor, but communication hours are also included in the hourly pricing, as communicating with clients is still labor. Third, mentioning the, quote, charity auction fair market value, end quote, referring to the 3,500 USD is a moot point, as the number has long been debunked as arbitrary. But I want to break this down into a couple more points here that to me rubs me the wrong way. Beyond Dokibird being now out of the conversation, because the whole issue was Doki had no line of sight into the communication and thus miscommunication happened. There have been zero communication during the project, no quotes, no asking for feedback or approval. How is that the artist's fault? The artist can't move forward because you guys are the roadblock. And this is straight BS, because there have been communication. There was feedback that was asked. Every single time the artist provided an Excel sheet, a quote, the artist was like, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you want to discuss this further, etc. What do you mean approval? There is no approval because you guys are the roadblock that haven't approved anything yet. This is why nothing has moved forward beyond this. So, debunked. Point number 2. We'd be willing to discuss payment, but nothing has been shown or delivered. You guys received a mock-up last year, because that's when this happened. This all fell apart. You guys received a mock-up. Has the artist not been talking to you this entire time, providing Excel sheets, providing part listing, providing estimates of costs, whatever, discussing back and forth? You are literally in this group chat with eyeballs. Like, how did you not see this? 3, pricing seems to go up every time we're talking. Yeah. 1, the labor cost is going up because the artist felt guilt tripped into lowering their prices to minimum wage rates, which, let me remind you, paying minimum wage for the labor cost of building a custom PC, an artisan task that requires an extreme high level of skill from the person who is building it, and you're gonna pay minimum wage for that expertise, that is unheard of in the industry. Unheard of. But regardless, the artist felt pressure to lower their prices, and then they felt like, wait a sec, I'm scamming myself. Let me raise my prices to regular prices. Now you're freaking out because the prices are actually fair. 1. 2, the other part is the artist has to block out time. Like, if another project comes up, I don't know if it did happen, right? But the artist is kind of like in this weird limbo with you guys. So the artist is expecting to be working with the next 6 to 12 weeks. And if a project comes in, they likely might not be able to take it because they're expecting this project to start and for them to finish it. And then, this is not how to do business, complete with things about a quote. Not them gaslighting the artist about how this is not how to do business, when, again, Manager 1 was the one that made the Tiltify, grabbing a random PC part picker list from the artist, using that number with the wrong currency as the estimate price for the build, without even getting the approval of the artist to use this number. And then they're the ones not giving the price to the artist. Over and over again, the artist and buyer kept asking for a budget over and over and over again. And you guys are the ones that are not giving the budget until way later, which is why things have been so slow. And then implying we're unprofessional streamer might be pocketing cash. No one said that. The artist never said, Doki is pocketing money. The artist said, oh, if you're worried about finances, you can get a tax deduction on this. So the finances is going to be less of a stress for you. Huh? And by the way, again, tax deductions does not mean you're pocketing cash. I'm gonna tell you right now, I take every tax deduction I can, okay? As an American, tax evasion is illegal, but tax avoidance is every American's duty, and I am a diehard patriot American in that aspect. Not in like anything else, honestly. But in avoiding taxes, okay? That is your American duty. That doesn't mean you're ethically wrong. That means you're utilizing the loopholes to your best capabilities as a red-blooded American. Sorry, I don't like using that term because then people are gonna think I'm alt-right. I'm not. Fair to ask to add the buyer back into the conversation so the buyer can know what the hell is happening to the PC he paid for. Because at the end of the day, we still have the bidder who is out 6.6k USD with no PC. Management and the artist go back and forth again, with the artist standing firm on their rates and management pushing back. The artist provides screenshots of communication between them and Management 1. Again, the screenshot says, Doki is 100% gonna pay whatever you charge for the PC. Once we have an idea of the final cost, we can finalize everything then. That is exactly what Manager 1 told the artist. This entire time, the artist is under the assumption any budget is okay. The 3.5k is just for PC parts. Doki's gonna pay for it. Only one PC. No deadline. That's what the artist thinks. And another message Manager 1 had said, good morning, just want to send a small update. I'll message the winner today to confirm their shipping details and all that good stuff. I'm happy to be the go-between for you both, but if you and the winner are comfortable, I can get you both connected on Discord to streamline things for you guys as far as figuring out specs and stuff. Let me know and make it happen. Secondly, regarding payment for the PC, I know it's probably up in the air at the moment, so we can stay in contact and figure that out as the project progresses, or as we have a more clear idea of projected cost. I did base the market value off your previous builds, and we would like to stay around the general cost for the parts themselves, but would like to give the buyer some wiggle room as far as, you know, potentially go for cheaper RAM and stuff. We already read this, but again, I need to show you this again just to refresh the memory of what was told to the artist by Manager 1. On this screenshot, Manager 3 says Manager 1, quote, had no mandate to claim that, end quote. There is then discussion on who is responsible for fulfilling this order. Management 3 says it's Management 1's responsibility, where the artist states Management 3 contacted the artist with the intention to pick up the project, indicating they were taking responsibility for it. This is so trippy. Manager 3 says, so far my calculation says you spent 2 to 3 weeks full days time to create this mockup, and that I think is hard to believe considering Doki just debuted around that time. And mockups usually take 2 to 4 days to complete and aren't a full-time day, 8-hour days. Side note, I do not see any hidden costs that might be attached, and I'm not an artist, hence me asking to clarify this a few times so I can double check this with legal and finance and with other artists in similar spaces on our end. We asked multiple quotes. We are not the same company as the previous C tweet, referring to management, because this is Management 3 and there was like a middle Management 2 and then there was Management 1. Yeah, and not him like devaluing the artist's work. By the way, again, like what you look at is not just the finished product, the hours it takes the artists to research the PC, to research the builds, to put things together. A lot of research is extra time. That's still time you should be paid for. Dokibird Production and Stakeholders was its own company and wasn't owned by Dokibird. The team that worked there was fired for reasons as she got taken advantage of. Hence, she started her own new company. I understand you're not responsible or involved, but I'm trying to inform you since it's relevant information in a business sense. We are a totally different legal entity from the old company. The old company had no official agreements with you, and the new company is looking into this and also have no agreements with you, let alone take over things of the old company. Now, I'm still talking here since I do think some sort of resolvement should happen, even if we're not legally obliged or obligated, and our conversations haven't been the best. But I can't help but get the feeling that both sides feel taken advantage of. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is just weird. This to me reads as gaslighting. Why are you explaining all the nitpicky of like previous management being fired, da da da? Again, who cares? That is not the artist's stuff. It's not the artist's job to know this. So all of this information is being presented in the lens of transparency. That's how the Management 3 is framing it. Like, this is just to be transparent. Whereas to me, it again reads manipulative, as in you're trying to push blame off of your shoulders onto Management 1. Again, we've already established ages ago Management 1 screwed up. The point that we need to talk about is who's gonna fix this. And it's Doki and team's responsibility to fix this. But all of this talk, Doki and her team keep going back and forth like about how we got here. And that, in my opinion, is done as a way to try to remove the responsibility off their shoulders. Being like, I don't have to deal with it because the previous management did it and I fired them. Well, gotta put it this way, guys. If I hired somebody and to manage my social media, okay, and they go on Twitter and they start, I don't know, scamming people out of crypto using my Twitter accounts, and I fire them, yeah, I fired them, but now I have to deal with a whole bunch of people that are down 10K because the previous management did crypto scams on my Twitter account, okay? I am still now responsible to clean up this mess because I hired them. And they were, as a result, my responsibility. And to me, this reads like a whole lot of, I don't want to deal with it. And again, I don't like the saying here of, I get a feeling that both sides feel taken advantage of. So Doki was screwed over by the previous management. We've all agreed on that. They keep talking about it, and I'm gonna crash out because we agreed on this. Like I'm not part of this conversation, right? But they agreed on it like 30 pages ago. They're still bringing it up as a way to like brush off responsibility. But anyways, Doki was screwed over, yes, but what do you mean taken advantage of, right? You hired a management team to run an auction that you didn't double check, so it went live as fucked up as it did. Again, partially your fault, mainly the management's fault. You should have known, but as the big boss up there, but sometimes things slip past your view, happens. Accidents happen. Who's gonna fix this problem? The artist is taken advantage of because they haven't been paid. It's basically, how can I say I'm not gonna pay you in like 50 different ways? Management 3 and Doki, but mainly Management 3, keeps bringing up how Management 1 fucked up. Again, like you said, Ham, you can't leverage this information against the artist because that's not the artist's fault. Pay the artist. Management 3 says, we understand that charity is Doki's thing and it might not be your thing, and you wish to get paid for services provided, even if there was no agreement, quote, or official signed stuff, which again is all Management 1's fault. But within all reason, the old company had tried to connect multiple times and failed early on for reasons provided out of their control. At that point, things have been put on a halt, not because of Dokibird production. I've seen you take very little accountability on that part when it comes to charging your provided services. With this, I mean if any customer, which we aren't since there isn't any agreement, waits this long, it's perfectly normal to not be happy with the services and talk about a solution. Further, it took the new company to get back in touch with you, and when things did not go the correct way, more than the fair market value has been asked as services for a mock-up. What would have happened if we didn't get in touch? You can sense we feel taken advantage of for these and some other reasons. This again is so icky. Management 3 is gross. Writing here, we understand that charity's Doki's thing and it might not be your thing. You're implying the artist is a shitty person and morally corrupt for not wanting to donate to charity, when it's not their responsibility to donate to charity because this was your charity auction. And the artist was under the impression they were going to be paid fairly for their services because those words came straight out of Doki's mouth. So what is with all this charity gaslighting? Like, the way I'm gonna crash out feels like I've taken a shot every single time I hear some charity gaslighting. Very sober, but man, again, they're saying, I see you take little accountability on that part regarding how the artist dropped the ball in communication because of their medical stuff. The artist apologized. We saw the artist actively apologize. I'm so sorry for dropping the ball. It is my bad. I read those words. You saw it. Maybe Manager 3 didn't see it because they weren't hired yet. I don't know. But with all philanthropic actions, Doki will benefit from this over time. The artist's gain will be minimal. Yeah. The artist is just trying to get paid for their time, man. And then they add, furthermore, it took the new company to get back in touch with you. Yeah, because it is your job to get back in touch with the artist, huh? The artist replied to the email being like, here's the options. Option A, I do the build. Option B, you refund the buyer and find a different builder. I still want to work with you guys. Let me know how to move forward. And then the artist got ghosted. I feel like it's pretty fair for the artist to assume that you guys decided to refund. And again, as the auction host, it's your responsibility to make sure everything follows through. I mean, with any customer, which we aren't since there isn't any agreement. The reason there isn't any agreement is because you guys screwed up. And the artist defending themselves. We are now 11 months out from this happening. The artist says, my services include, but are not limited to, the mock-up design that was created on a rush turnaround. I provided a breakdown of the additional labor and administrative work in the spreadsheet, being as transparent as possible about my rates and costs. The proposals, updated hardware list, cost breakdown calculations, project planning and coordination, and other documents are part of the services you requested last month. You are correct. There are no hidden costs involved. To build trust, I've also offered to share previous invoices from similar projects to demonstrate my rates are consistent and aligned with industry norms. I'm not a large company, but rather an academically recognized, published small artist specializing in unique, boutique PC builds. My charges reflect the scope, complexity, and quality of the work involved. If this weren't the case, the auction winner would not have bid on the item. Additionally, I've consulted a charity manager who works with Tiltify to better understand the situation. From my understanding, the contract between the auction winner and Doki states the winner is to receive a bespoke piece created by me. As per industry standards, the item should be fulfilled by the artist specified in the auction terms unless otherwise stated. While I understand shopping around for quotes, Doki's obligation under the contract is to provide an item created by me as advertised to the customer. The charity in question had no formal relationship with me as the creator. This was an in aid of fundraiser, meaning the funds raised were donated to the charity, but the charity itself had no involvement in managing or fulfilling the auction. Therefore, there should be no discussion of further donation or garnishing my pay, as this falls entirely outside the scope of the charity's involvement. Regarding the separation between Dokibird production and your current entity, while I acknowledge the distinction, the work was initiated under the previous company, and continuity of responsibility is implied through our ongoing discussions and your acknowledgement of the project. We've already addressed the breaches and missteps by both sides regarding my agreement with the previous entity. Despite these challenges, I remain committed to resolving the matter promptly and fairly to ensure the auction winner receives the item they deserve. I'm still open to resolving this amicably and working with you on a fair solution. However, the amount due reflects the work I've completed in good faith and aligns with rates I've charged for similar projects. Edited to try to fix the bullet points. The artist, by the way, oh my god. Patience of a saint! They remain professional up until this day. It is crazy. This artist bent over backwards to try to make the situation happen, reaching out, negotiating, lowering their prices astronomically to minimum wage to try to make it happen. And then as a result, they're just getting it thrown back in their face and being gaslit. Being like, well, you took a cheaper rate. Why didn't you donate to charity? Da, da, da. Saying all this stuff because the artist was like willing to bend over backwards to try to make this happen. And it's just being used as like a gotcha later. This is so icky. The artist says, I've thoroughly considered the situation at hand and unfortunately have to notify you my final quote is the previously stated £8,600. I understand why this is complicating for you all due to managerial changes and the amount of time that's passed. I apologize for wavering on this decision, which may have contributed to miscommunication on the subject. The bottom line here is I'm not going to accept any less than my industry standard rate, and I'm not interested in undercutting other independent artists in the industry. I understand if you'd like to pursue this commission at a different quoted rate, but my compensation is non-negotiable. I'm unfortunately not interested in any further drawn-out dialogue, and therefore will not be responding to anything short of an agreed-upon offer. Thank you, and again, my apologies for any confusion in our time reaching the result. And Manager 3 says, we wish to continue conversations, but without concrete evidence as requested 3 to 4 times before, I cannot go back to the team and even start the further conversation of possible compensation. We requested several things, and these items have yet to be provided to us. If these items are provided, we might be able to assist you. The team also asked why you did not reestablish communication after losing contact upon your own return, and if you did, why was everything put on a halt? Once again, blaming the artist for something that isn't the artist's fault. If you wish to stop communicating on your end, then I cannot further help look for a possible solution between us. If you wish to pursue any legal matters, then please contact Doki's business email, and hopefully you can find your resolution there with Dokibird production. Please be advised that Dokibird doesn't work underneath them anymore, but they're still fulfilling previous contractual agreements. So here, Management 3 is trying to brush the problems and like throw it back onto Management 1. It seemed that the final conclusion moving forward was Doki's management was going to look for another builder to complete the PC build, having not compensated the original artist in the process. They shopped around, potentially going through a PC company before settling on a buyer, or a builder, sorry. So we have more updates. writes, now, beyond that, like almost 3 months have passed. We're now at the end of April, April 28th. The buyer says, I was given an email for the builder finally. Ever encountered this email before? Googling has netted me nothing. And they said they dropped the email. The artist says, wait, it's about to be May and you've only just got the builder? They made you wait a whole 5 months. I have to laugh at how ridiculous that is. Goodness me, that is really dreadful. I've never heard of this person before. They don't have any other social media than a YouTube channel. They look like they're a small creator, but it's a bit weird if they're a creator and have like no other socials than a throne wish list and an email, which is a Gmail domain. They don't seem to have much of a portfolio for PC builds is something I'm noticing. Like, I'm not sure if it's because the company won't do it. This builder will have to come up with their own design. If even an established company partnered with a famous VTuber can't fulfill her request for as cheap as she wants it to be, and she won't pay me to do it like she was supposed to, big concern about this creator being exploited with how much this should cost. Doki shouldn't be trying to undercut industry prices as one of the most famous VTubers in the world. Big yikes. Yeah, by the way, so the redacted PC company, from my understanding, Doki and their team had went to this PC company being like, oh, we want this build and we want it for this price. And the company said it wasn't possible. And they quoted Doki at around the same price that the artist had quoted Doki for, being like, if this is what you want, this is how much it's going to cost. The literal company had given a very similar quote, which is why Doki's team did not go through the PC company. So the buyer responds, everything is finalized in the sense that parts are ordered and everything, but it wasn't until the last second they're like, quote, okay, here's the guy that's going to build it, send the shipping label here, end quote. Everything was trucking along real slow. And in reply to the artist not having any socials, the buyer says, this appears to be a suggestion from the PC company rather than Doki, I think. I'm still doing a one-on-one correspondence with Doki. The group chat with the company never ended up happening. I honestly don't know how much the creator is being paid. That part was never mentioned to me. I suppose it's just interesting how this is coming back to bite her in the butt, since from the time when the part list was finalized, which fit into her budget, to now, the final amount she had to pay for parts has increased like a third. Honestly, I think I got an email address within a day of me asking, for at least the fourth time, about shipping info. For example, tips carriers type of shipping, because I told them I was leaving the US soon to travel and I wanted it to be set up before I left. Doki suggested that I even wait until I come back. I'm like, no. We are now almost in May and the auction happened the first week of March last year. We are now 14 months out. And then May 7th, the buyer has an update. So Doki ordered stuff from Amazon and didn't realize it got canceled because Amazon thought it was fraud because it was shipped to the builder in the US while Doki lives in Canada. And the builder didn't even know it was supposed to be directly shipped to them. And apparently them pinning the PC company rep twice still didn't get an answer. And the artist says, what? This is such a colossal train wreck. I'm impressed. And the buyer says, it's a stupid game of telephone. Me communicating with Doki, which will communicate with the PC company rep, which communicates with the builder. But at least now it's me communicating with Doki, who communicates with the rep, who communicates with the builder, but there is now a line of communication between the buyer and the builder. And the artist says, I feel so bad for you and the builder. And the buyer says, sad face, I forgot what you said, but you were right. They did shop around for the cheapest they could get, aka free. And the artist says, what do you mean free? And the buyer sends the message from the builder, which reads, I'm sorry if they told you a certain date, but I clearly told them I can't give a date if I don't have the rest of the parts. I can't control anything out of my control. I am at their mercy since they handled ordering and logistics. I am just a builder, a free builder at that. Conclusion. This seems to be a situation that completely got out of hand due to the faulty charity auction setup from the first management, alongside miscommunication from constant changing management and mismanaged expectations of how this would go down. It also does appear there's misaligned expectations, with the artist, who's very familiar with working with industry and PC builds, entering into this relationship thinking it would be a casual relationship with a VTuber, and Doki's management and potentially Doki by extension thinking it was a professional relationship. A fair amount of miscommunication stems from the original $3,500 quote pulled by Management 1 from a previous build of the artist, which used the wrong currency, only included PC parts, and didn't account for the fact that build pricing is not interchangeable one-to-one. There also was no mention of Doki wanting a duplicate of each item. This becomes irrelevant later as Doki ended up getting a custom PC through other means, and this serves as another point of miscommunication. Due to management changing midway, there was also misunderstanding between artist and Management 2 as to whether the build was even continuing at all. Management 1 also made it extremely clear to the artist that Doki would be completely paying for the build, but future management would not have the same understanding, expecting the artist to then donate the computer. And finally, there was a misunderstanding about budget and who was paying for what, with the buyer willing to cover the difference of upgrading the expected PC parts to the top of the line items they wanted and pricing of the artist's hourly rate, with expectations of the artist not charging for labor at all, to then minimum wage, to then the artist's standard rate in 2024 of 32 British pounds per hour. It seems like a colossal series of missteps, with Doki and management not wanting to step up as the bigger person to remedy the issue. To this day, the artist has not been compensated for their labor, nor has the bidder received a PC. And it appears there's a new builder who is doing the build for free. So yeah, the way it reads to me is that overall this charity was started as a good intention charity to raise money, and it has divulged into this crap fest where through means either Doki or Management 3 or both did not want to pay the artist for what the PC build would fully cost, and they hop through as many hoops as possible to avoid that by trying to gaslight the artist into it's charity so you should donate it, into oh charge minimum wage, all of this other stuff, and then trying to push blame onto Management 1 as a way to try to like not take responsibility for this whole PC situation divulging into the way it does. And everything completely fell apart. And at the end of the day, everyone loses except Doki and the charity, essentially, right? Doki did the charity stream, so as a result received like the accolades for doing the charity stream, and then the charity received the money, which is fair. That was the end goal at all. But now we have an artist that is not paid for all the time and labor they put into this. We have a bidder who is out 6.6K without receiving a PC, with no line in sight for still receiving the PC because there's still issues with this new builder, and that's where it stands today. At the end of the day, a lot of people might be like, is this a moral situation, right? Is Doki a bad person? I don't think Doki is a bad person. I think Doki handled this poorly. Is this one situation a representative of who Doki is as a human being? No. Right? I don't know Doki as a person. But this is gonna sound so privileged, but Doki is a big creator. Is money this big of an issue? As in the moral high ground of wanting to make sure the price of the PC matches what the charity got, then why couldn't you donate the difference to charity and pay for the PC? And now it's all done. Just pay out of pocket, take the loss, and call it a day. Or do a payment plan or something. Like, I don't know. To me, it just feels so icky to see a bigger creator just like over and over again, them and their management, right, try to gaslight the artist into taking a much lower rate. I would love to hear your thoughts about all of this. Who do you think is at fault, and what do you think is the best solution for this? At the end of the day, a whole bunch of people got burned in the process, which really, really sucks. And hopefully this could get resolved soon, guys, because this has been going on for 14 months, by the way. No resolutions, whatever. And like people seem to be saying that Doki is independent now, so I don't even know if this manager 3 is still working with them, etc. But this is just unfortunate. If you like the video, I appreciate it. If you like it, subscribe. I don't know if I'm gonna make the doc public. I might not. Never made a Google Doc call out before, but yeah, I have a VGen if you want to check me out there. I also have a coffee with free resources for streamers and creators, and I also stream on Twitch 3 days a week. Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays at 6 p.m. PST. You guys saw it live on Twitch, so if you want to be fresh to the piping hot tea, come over to stream, and I'll hope to catch you guys in another one of my YouTube videos.